Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Parting away with money is never fun, especially when it's a pretty hefty sum of money. That's why when you give money to someone, unless it's explicitly for charity or out of the kindness of your heart, you expect to receive something in return. As an example, when you go to the store and you hand the cashier money for the product, you expect to receive the product in return. When you hire someone to do a job and you hand the person money, you expect that the job will be done and that the job will be completed. In college football, when you give money to a school to play you, you expect that this school will come to your campus or wherever you decided that the game will be played at, and they will play you. In other words, you don't just give someone thousands upon thousands of dollars for something with the expectation that something will be done, and then not only not get it, but have no recourse whatsoever of getting it back because you designed the contract so poorly. Well, in 1988, that's exactly what happened to the station that you've been watching this entire time, an ABC affiliate down in El Paso, Texas, known as KVIA. Because during the 1988 season, they were set to televise the WAC game between the UTEP Miners and the Wyoming Cowboys, and they paid Wyoming a rather hefty sum of money to make sure that everything went according to plan, and that the station could broadcast the game to the best of their abilities. However, not only did they not even end up broadcasting the game, but because of how the contract was worded, they didn't even get their money back for what they paid money for requesting. It's a truly bizarre situation, and it's a truly weird moment in the history of college football on TV that you might not know about. And we're going to take a deep dive into that today. Because this is the story behind one of the craziest TV controversies of the 1988 college football season. Before I talk about the incident in question and what caused the controversy, we need some context to understand what the original plan was, and what KVIA wanted to have happen. On November 9th, 1988, these two teams were set to play in what felt like an absolutely monumental game on paper before the season started. In one corner, you had the Wyoming Cowboys, as in, the defending champions of the WAC. In 1987, Wyoming was an amazing team, winning the WAC with an undefeated conference record, making it to the Holiday Bowl, and playing in their first bowl game since 1976, when they played in the Fiesta Bowl. And in the other corner, you had the UTEP Miners, who had one of their most successful seasons in program history, going 7-4, which was the most wins they had in a season since all the way back in 1967, and was the first time they won 5 conference games in a season since joining the WAC and since 1956, when they were in the Border Conference and when they were known as Texas Western. This game between Wyoming and UTEP, entering the 1988 season, was projected to be one of the most anticipated on the entire WAC calendar, as it could potentially decide the conference title and a spot in the Holiday Bowl. And the ABC affiliate that was covering the game in El Paso, Channel 7, otherwise known as KVIA, knew this. They had the rights to every UTEP game, having just gotten the rights for 1988. And right off the bat, the affiliate was struggling. It was not smooth sailing in the slightest bit, which was a pretty good omen for what was about to happen here. KVIA couldn't show the start of UTEP's game against Tulsa, and had to delay the start time by 30 minutes, because of some bizarre rule that stated that as per the contract between ESPN and the College Football Association, if ESPN is carrying a national game at the same time, a local station can only pick up the local team's game if it is joined in progress 30 minutes later. Why this rule was in place and how it made any sense, I have no clue. Television back in the 1980s, when it came to college football, with everyone trying to figure out what to do after the whole NCAA versus Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma decision opened up the floodgates, was bizarre. But regardless, KVIA held the rights to every single UTEP game down in El Paso. However, there was a problem with the game between UTEP and Wyoming as things stood, and that was the fact that KVIA would not be able to televise it in its current time slot due to prior broadcasting obligations. As things stood, the Wyoming UTEP game which was going to be held in Wyoming, was going to start at 12 o'clock. And for whatever reason, that didn't work at all for KVIA. I couldn't figure out the reason why that was the case, and I dug high and low. However, it was not for that ESPN-related reason, seeing as the issue did not impact Wyoming whatsoever. With that, KVIA had a huge problem on their hands. They just got the rights to minor football, and this was arguably their biggest game of the year, and as things stood, they wouldn't be able to televise it, leaving tons of minor fans in the dark. So they did what any reasonable affiliate would do in this spot, and they asked Wyoming if they would be so kind as to move the game back so that the game could be shown on TV in El Paso. Seemed like a win-win for everyone involved. Not only did it mean more eyeballs on the game, but even though it would have been a bit of a hassle, especially if some promotional materials were sent out already with the original time of the game, it was a simple gesture, and one where you would expect the other side to return the favor if it ever got to that point. Wyoming had to adjust a few things logistically speaking, so they asked for $5,000 from KVIA, and if KVIA could pony up the $5,000, then the game would be moved back an hour, being moved from noon to 1 o'clock, so that KVIA could televise the game. So everything's good to go now, right? The game's pushed back an hour, KVIA can televise it, Wyoming's got their money for making this relatively simple change, and everything's good to go. However, there was just one small problem that not a whole lot of people saw coming. Most people thought, and rightfully so, that the battle between Wyoming and UTEP would be one of the biggest games of the entire season. But few people expected that it would be, quite literally, the biggest game in conference play, and would essentially be the de facto title game. Few expected that this could be one of the biggest games in the history of both programs, and that this game could single-handedly decide who wins the WAC and gets a spot in the Holiday Bowl. Entering this game, Wyoming and UTEP were some of the best mid-majors in the entire country, and were battling 1-2 for the top spot in the conference. Wyoming was undefeated, and was ranked inside the top 20 of the AP poll, even being ranked as high as number 10 entering this game against the Miners. They had an offense that was firing on all cylinders, and finished the season with the 4th highest scoring offense in the land by averaging 39.3 points per game. In their 4 games prior to the UTEP game, the Cowboys scored a whopping 219 points, or close to 55 points per game. And UTEP was also a great team. They were 8-1 and were riding high on a 6-game winning streak, including back-to-back wins over the New Mexico schools, where they won by a combined scoreline of 79-9. It was clear that the Wyoming UTEP game was more than just a regular old WAC game. This battle between the two schools was going to get national attention. We're talking about reporters from all different publications and media outlets, including ESPN, the Boston Globe, the Los Angeles Times, and the Philadelphia Daily News, scheduling interviews and press calls with both coaches. We're talking about the largest crowd in Wyoming football history, with over 32,000 fans packing the stands, thanks in part to a genius buy one, get one free promotion. Long story short, this game was huge. And it was so huge, in fact, that CBS decided to pick it up to air on their network. That's right. CBS, as per their contract with the WAC, had to air at least one WAC game a year over the air on the West Coast. And they knew, considering how big this game was, that this Wyoming UTEP game was going to be the one. UTEP had never played on national TV before, and Wyoming had very little national TV exposure outside of the occasional bowl game. So for this to happen was huge for the conference, and was huge for both schools from every perspective imaginable, from recruiting, to exposure, to prestige, to everything else along those lines. If you were watching CBS that day, you were either getting LSU Alabama, or you were getting Wyoming UTEP. And UTEP head coach Bob Stoll was thrilled about this national opportunity, saying, "You can get a feel for most football teams because you see them periodically. People see our record, but they don't know what kind of team we have. We're finally getting to the point where we should be. You play well, and you get on television." However, while this news was great for a bunch of parties, you might have noticed there's one party that might have gotten royally screwed in all of this, and that's none other than KVIA, who was supposed to televise the game. Obviously, they weren't televising it anymore, since CBS had the rights to supersede any local UTEP broadcast. It's like how if a Major League Baseball game gets picked up by Fox, you're not going to see the local broadcast team call and air the game. KVI requested that the game get pushed back, and they paid $5,000 to do so. And now, they weren't even going to televise the game. Stinks to be them for sure, but maybe in the long run, this can be a good thing, as UTEP might get more eyeballs on them for future games, and KVIA's ratings might go up if people are interested in the minors, especially if they somehow beat Wyoming on the road and are still in pursuit for the title and the Holiday Bowl spot. And at least they get their $5,000 back. Of course they get their $5,000 back, right? Nope. See, you would think that that would be the case, but not at all. Even though Fred Albers, the sports director for the station, said they would try and recover the money, apparently that was a lost cause. As Brad Hovius, the athletic director at UTEP, said on KVIA trying to recover the money they gave to Wyoming for this time change to accommodate them, that never materialized due to CBS taking over the rights, that was part of the negotiation going in. KVIA knew they would have the games after the College Football Association games. Translation, at least from the looks of it, they were completely screwed. Now maybe Wyoming gave them the $5,000 back out of the kindness of their hearts, although I could find no reports on that whatsoever. But KVIA was straight out of luck. That's $5,000, or roughly $12,300 in today's money, that was going right down the drain, where they received nothing whatsoever in return. In other words, it was kind of like this scene from SpongeBob. Congratulations, KVIA! You have just given me $5,000!
Huh, great! What do I win?
Nothing! Now get out!
What?
Get out!
Oh, and as if this couldn't go from bad to worse for everyone in El Paso, this game was an absolute bloodbath in favor of the Cowboys, with the Miners getting absolutely embarrassed on the national stage. Wyoming never trailed at any point, and won the game 51-6, leading at 27-3 at the halftime break. Wyoming tripled UTEP's total first downs, winning that battle 27-9, as the Miners held onto the ball for just 20 minutes, while the Cowboys had 507 yards of total offense compared to 162 for the Miners. Everything about this game was ugly with a capital U, as when your starting quarterback, Pat Haggerty, goes 7 for 25 with 66 yards passing, completing 28% of his passes, and finishing the game with an NFL passer rating of exactly 39.6, which is exactly what your passer rating would be if you did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. That's when you know it's just not your day. But if anyone had it worse than UTEP's football team on this day, it was definitely UTEP's broadcasting partner, Channel 7. Because let this be a lesson to anyone in contracts. Make sure you have clauses in there about what happens if the contract cannot be performed. Cover all of your bases. In other words, don't do what KVIA did. Especially if you are not number one in the pecking order, don't just assume that you're going to broadcast the game, and then you're completely left in the dark and out a solid $5,000 because of it. Because both on the field and off the field, on this November day in 1988, no one in El Paso was having a good time. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.